If a film gets nominated for an Oscar, it instantly becomes part of cinema history. For many people, that means prestige, validation, and a place at the very top of the industry. But what about the films that were truly deserving and still got ignored? Today, we're talking about lesbian films that deserved Oscars, the ones that were overlooked, the few that actually won, and the frustrating pattern behind all of it. Because for decades, stories about women loving women were either erased, pushed to the margins, or only acknowledged when they were wrapped in tragedy, repression, or pain. So if you love queer cinema, film history, or just want to talk about some of the Academy's biggest blind spots, stay with me. Even though a lot of people say the Oscars aren't what they used to be, and that the ceremony often feels more like a popularity contest than a true measure of artistic value, the reality is that Oscar recognition still matters. It shapes reputations, boosts visibility, and decides which stories are remembered by the mainstream. And lesbian stories have almost never been treated fairly in that system. Let's start with one of the earliest and most important examples, The Children's Hour from 1961. This is one of the most painful films of its era, and one of the boldest for even touching the subject of love between women. Of course, because of the time it was made, the emotional core of that relationship is mostly buried beneath implication, silence, and fear. It's not presented as a free or open love story. It's presented through social anxiety, suspicion, and punishment. And that's exactly why it matters so much. It shows us the cost of simply stepping outside the norm in classic Hollywood. The film earned multiple Oscar nominations, but it won nothing. And honestly, that feels symbolic of how queer female stories would be treated for decades. Acknowledged at a distance, but rarely rewarded. Then, in 1985, came The Color Purple. Now, not everyone immediately classifies it as a lesbian film, but the emotional and romantic connection between Celie and Shug is impossible to ignore. It's tender, profound, and deeply important. For many viewers, that relationship is one of the most moving parts of the entire story. The film received an incredible number of nominations and still went home empty-handed. To this day, that is still considered one of the Academy's most infamous shutouts. And when you look back at it now, it's hard not to feel that the film's emotional truth was understood by audiences more than it was respected by the institution that was supposed to honor it. Then, in 1999, we got Boys Don't Cry. This is a landmark film in queer cinema, and an essential one, even if it's incredibly difficult to watch. It's raw, painful, and deeply unsettling because it shows love existing under the constant threat of violence. It's not comforting, it's not soft, but it is important. And unlike so many others, this one did break through at the Oscars. Hilary Swank won Best Actress, and that win marked a turning point in how queer stories could be recognized, at least on an individual performance level. But even here, it's worth noticing something. The Academy was willing to reward the acting, while the story itself remained harder for Hollywood to fully embrace. That pattern repeats again and again. Take Mulholland Drive in 2001. This film brought a relationship between women into a surreal, psychological, and emotionally haunting space. It's not a straightforward romance, and it certainly isn't gentle, but it became iconic because of how unforgettable and layered it is. The bond at the center of the film is full of desire, illusion, vulnerability, and destruction. It was recognized for David Lynch's direction, and over time it became a true cult classic. But it also reflects a long-standing trend in queer female representation. For years, Hollywood seemed more comfortable showing relationships between women through darkness, instability, or obsession than through peace, joy, or emotional safety. Then came The Hours in 2002. This is another film that people debate when it comes to labels, but it absolutely belongs in conversations about queer female representation. The women in this film live with desire, repression, longing, and versions of themselves they were never fully allowed to express. It's not a happy love story. It's a film about silence, identity, and the emotional cost of suppression. The movie received major Oscar attention, and Nicole Kidman won for her performance as Virginia Woolf. Again, the Academy recognized the transformation, the suffering, the prestige of the performance, but the emotional and queer dimensions of these stories were still not the center of the conversation. In 2003, Monster arrived and shocked audiences. Charlize Theron's performance is still considered one of the greatest physical and emotional transformations in modern film acting. Her Oscar win was absolutely deserved. But just like with other films on this list, the story is rooted in violence, trauma, and destruction. The relationship at the center is real, but it exists inside a brutal world. This is part of what makes the history of lesbian representation in awards so complicated. So many of the films that did get recognition were attached to pain, danger, or social collapse. Then we have The Kids Are All Right in 2010. This one was important because it showed something Hollywood had rarely centered before: an adult lesbian couple with children, long-term emotional baggage, domestic tension, and recognizably ordinary problems. That visibility mattered. It made queer women feel less like a taboo concept and more like a real part of everyday life. The film received major nominations, including Best Picture, and yet it still didn't win. And even though people remain divided on the film itself, its place in the conversation is undeniable. It brought a lesbian family into the center of mainstream awards season, and that alone made it significant. Then, in 2015, we got Carol. And honestly, this is one of the most painful Oscar injustices in modern queer cinema. Carol is elegant, restrained, beautifully acted, visually stunning, and emotionally devastating in the quietest possible way. It tells a love story between women with maturity, tenderness, and respect. It doesn't treat desire like a gimmick. It treats it like something precious and dangerous at once. The film received multiple nominations, but it won nothing. And for many people, that still feels unbelievable. If there was ever a modern lesbian film that seemed built for Oscar recognition, it was this one. And yet, once again, the Academy looked at a masterpiece and stopped short of fully honoring it. In 2018, The Favorite changed the tone. This film is sharp, strange, witty, and emotionally vicious. The relationships between its women are not soft or idealized. They're tangled up in power, strategy, dependency, and control. And that's part of what made it so refreshing. It didn't ask for permission. It didn't try to sanitize female desire. Olivia Colman won Best Actress, and deservedly so. The film proved that stories involving desire between women could be messy, political, funny, and bold, and still command serious awards attention. Then came Tar in 2022. This is not a romance. It's not even a comforting film, but it is one of the most complex portrayals of a queer woman we've seen in major awards cinema. Lydia Tarr is brilliant, disturbing, ambitious, manipulative, and impossible to simplify. The film is about abuse of power, control, image, and collapse. It received major nominations, and Cate Blanchett's performance was widely considered one of the best of the year. Even without a win, Tar showed that lesbian representation in awards cinema had evolved into something more layered and less easily categorized. But now we get to the most frustrating part: the films that were truly exceptional and didn't even get nominated where they should have. First, Portrait of a Lady on Fire. This one still hurts. It's visually breathtaking, emotionally precise, intimate without being exploitative, and one of the most beautifully directed queer love stories of recent decades. It's the kind of film that feels instantaneously timeless. And yet the Academy barely made room for it in the way many people felt it deserved. Then there's Bound from 1996, a stylish, intelligent, sexy thriller from the Wachowskis, and still one of the most iconic lesbian films ever made. It's bold, tightly directed, and full of confidence. It gave us women who were smart, capable, and unapologetic. And in the 90s, that was apparently too much for the Academy to know what to do with. Another major one is The Handmaiden. Visually, this film is extraordinary. The cinematography, the production design, the costumes, the tension, the structure, everything is crafted with incredible precision. It's seductive, sharp, and completely unforgettable. The fact that it wasn't embraced more fully in the Oscar conversation still feels like a massive missed opportunity. Then there's Pariah. This film is essential. It put a young Black lesbian at the center of the story with honesty, tenderness, and emotional intelligence at a time when that kind of representation was still painfully rare. It should have opened more doors than it did. Instead, it remains one of those films people discover later and immediately wonder, how was this not recognized more? And of course, blue is the warmest color. Controversial? Absolutely. Complicated? Definitely. But impossible to ignore. It became an international talking point, won major recognition elsewhere, and left a huge cultural mark. Yet when it came to the Academy, the response was far colder than many expected. Finally, there's The World to Come, a quiet, restrained historical romance about longing, confinement, and emotional survival. It's the kind of film built on atmosphere, performance, and ache. Maybe it was too subtle for some voters. Maybe it felt too familiar in its sadness. But it's another example of a lesbian story that deserved far more serious recognition than it got. So what's the conclusion here? For most of Oscar history, films about women loving women were not rewarded for their stories. When they did break through, it was usually through an actress's performance, not because the industry was truly ready to celebrate the love, the perspective, or the meaning of the film itself. That's what makes this history so frustrating. These films were often praised when they were tragic, intense, or serious in ways the Academy could frame as prestige. But joy, tenderness, intimacy, and lesbian love as something worthy in itself, that took much longer to be taken seriously. Still, whether the Academy recognized them or not, these films mattered. They changed people. They made audiences feel seen. They expanded what queer cinema could be. And in that sense, they already won something bigger than a trophy. Because sometimes the real legacy of a film isn't what happened on Oscar night. It's the fact that years later, we're still talking about it. So now I want to hear from you. Which lesbian film do you think the Academy ignored the most? And which one do you think absolutely should have won? Leave your picks in the comments. And if you want more videos like this about queer cinema, lesbian stories, and the films that deserved better, don't forget to like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.